The Carolina Panthers add a safety with ties to Ejiro Evero, and they're set to host a pair of receivers this week. We'll break it all down right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Fridays throughout the offseason, I'm right here answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me over on Twitter to get your questions in for this week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. We are 1 week through the first week of free agency as the Carolina Panthers and all the 32 teams in the NFL have made numerous moves so far to help improve their team ahead of the 2024 season. So most of the money right now that was available has pretty much been allocated to the top players in free agency. The next week and beyond, you're going to see some players who may have a name like an Odell Beckham Jr. or Jadeveon Clowney, who we're going to talk about here momentarily on the show. You'll hear those guys taking visits, taking their time, but really all the top dollar players are already off the market. So anyone who comes in is likely to be some veteran experience or a depth piece, not necessarily any sort of game-changing type of players that the Panthers will sign. It's possible, though, that they find a diamond in the rough like they did a couple years ago for Frankie Louvu, and that guy turns out to be a very good player for the Carolina Panthers. But right now, don't expect anything crazy to happen moving forward as the Panthers finish up the rest of the month of March with free agency and then shift their focus to pro days and, of course, to the 2024 NFL draft up in Detroit, Michigan this year. But the Panthers did make another signing on Friday afternoon after I talked to you all about the signing of K'Lavon Chaisson at edge rusher. They have added a starting safety. They've signed former Rams safety Jordan Fuller to a 1-year, $5.25 million deal. It's up to $5.25 million rather. Fuller has 7 career interceptions in 48 games, 46 starts made with the Los Angeles Rams. Last year in 2023, Fuller started all 17 games, including the playoff game in Detroit. He had 3 interceptions, 94 tackles, 8 pass breakups. His opponent passer rating was at 86.0. So he's a solid player last year for the Rams. Looking over at Pro Football Focus, his overall grade was a 66.7. That's 48th out of 95 qualifying safeties. Coverage grade, a 63.3, 52nd out of 94 qualifying safeties. And then his run defense grade was a 75.0, 20th out of 92 qualifying safeties. Pretty good run defense grade there from Jordan Fuller, who, of course, has ties to Ejiro Evero, who spent a couple seasons there in LA. A'Shawn Robinson spent 3 years in LA with Ejiro Evero. He's now here filling in as a starter on the defensive line. Jewell spent 1 season in Denver under Ejiro Evero, who's a DC that season in Denver before coming to Carolina. And he talked about that is Josey Jewell. That was the most fun he's ever had playing football up until that point. He's now come in replacing Frankie Louvu at one of the inside linebacker spots next to Shaq Thompson. So the third player so far on this rebuilt defense that has ties to the DC. And it makes a lot of sense to do that, to have players who know what's expected of them in this scheme, who the defensive coordinator is interested in. I also find it interesting when you think about the restructuring of this front office in Carolina. Before, a lot of the talk here in Carolina was about how there was a lot of alignment, that there was a lot of collaboration. Really, that's the word, collaboration, when it came to the Panthers coaching staff, the Panthers front office, and going about bringing in players. DJ Chark is a player that Frank Reich really wanted to have. You look at Jonathan Mingo. That was a player that Sean Jefferson, the former wide receiver coach, really wanted the Panthers to have. DJ Johnson, same case with Ejiro Evero. So Scott Fitterer listened to his scouts, but also listen to his coaches and the kind of players that they wanted to sign during free agency and the kind of players they wanted to target during the draft. So I wondered, with Dan Morgan taking over, and he was here throughout the tenure of Scott Fitter as assistant general manager and was heading up the scouting department, I wondered, would he just get the Panthers players that he felt like fit, or would he be listening to Dave Canales, Ejiro Evero, and the rest of the coaching staff and bringing in some players that they may have familiarity with? And it seems to be that he's still probably going out there and getting players that he thinks are dogs and that fit the Carolina Panthers mentality moving forward, but also players that have ties to the current coaching staff. The Panthers had a need on the defensive line, so they need to get a player like A'Shawn Robinson, who is known as a run stopper and can help them out for a season as probably a one-year solution. They needed a player like Josey, Jewell, who has experience playing at a fairly high level in the NFL as a starting linebacker in Denver. Now he comes over. He understands the system. They need a player in Jordan Fuller who already understands the defensive scheme that's going to be run here. Xavier Woods and Von Bell last year had never been in this scheme at the safety spot that Ejiro Evero wanted to implement. So it makes sense now. Okay, move on from Von Bell for whatever reason. I guess there was that roster bonus that was due to be paid out on Saturday. Now he brings in a player at a lower rate who understands his defense, and there really shouldn't be much of a learning curve for the three guys coming in. So smart to bring in those players at the ties, but also there were three players that are at positions of need and three players that are proven starters in Josey Jewell, A'Shawn Robinson, and now Jordan Fuller coming over from the Rams. The one question I do have about this is, how will the safeties be aligned? I was looking at PFF to see where Jordan Fuller and Xavier Woods have lined up throughout their careers. Fuller has played 1,933 snaps at free safety, while only 677 in the box. Xavier Woods has played a lot of snaps, 3,749 at free safety, while 1,609 in the box. Last year, it was more Woods at free, Von Bell at the box, and they kind of mix things up at points in time throughout the season. I would think, though, with Jordan Fuller coming over from LA, where he was just solely a free safety, coming into the system, that he would be the guy likely at free this upcoming season. But that's something to look at as they try to figure out how they're going to line these safeties in this new look defense under Ejiro Evero in 2024. And another thing, too, you think about some of the players they brought in that are like younger, like a DJ Wonnum just getting out of his rookie deal. Same thing with K'Lavon Chaisson getting out of his rookie deal. That is a low cost, high potential kind of player for the Carolina Panthers. You look at Jordan Fuller as well. He's exiting his rookie deal. He's entering into what should be his prime, and it's only a one-year deal up to $5.25 million. If he comes in, performs well, Ejiro Evero stays for maybe another season. If he's not able to get a head coaching job next cycle, that's somebody that I would think the Carolina Panthers would be looking at as, okay, maybe we bring him back for another year at maybe a higher salary to stick him around here for a couple seasons. He's someone that I can look at like a DJ Wonnum that could be one of the bedrocks of this defense moving forward, as he is at going to be 26 this upcoming season, not an older player, just getting out of his rookie deal. That's been a trend by the Carolina Panthers after 1 week in free agency. Now, a couple things, too, that I want to hit on before we discuss the outlook there at the edge rusher spot. Talked about DJ Wonnum, talked about K'Lavon Chaisson on Friday's episode of Locked On Panthers. Want to get into Jadeveon Clowney and the Panthers' continued pursuit about him. But the Panthers are apparently also going to be looking at wide receivers this week, as Ian Rappaport reported earlier during the weekend, as the Panthers continue to look at adding weapons. Sources say they're bringing in former Cowboys wide receiver Michael Gallup in for a visit. The Charlotte Observer also first reporting that Mike Williams, the former Clemson star and former Los Angeles Chargers wide receiver who was cut last week, he's expected to also visit Carolina this week. Looking at the two, they're both coming off of, at least Williams is coming off a torn ACL, but they both had significant injuries in the past couple of seasons. Gallup's was about 3 years ago, and since tearing his ACL, he has not been the same explosive player that he was early on in his career in Dallas. Last year, only 34 receptions, 418 yards, 2 touchdowns. The year prior to that, pretty similar numbers. He's been a below average to average receiver in the NFL the last couple of seasons. Now they have CeeDee Lamb, and he's going to get the lion's share of the targets there in Dallas, but Gallup has not necessarily provided what he was providing prior to that knee injury. So the thought maybe is after a couple of years getting back, maybe that medical will look better. That's a big part of the visits, is looking at his medical, seeing the issues the player may have, trying to figure out whether this could be a fit for the Carolina Panthers. The one thing I do look at with Gallup is you have Adam Thielen coming back. I don't think he's going to be taking a reduced role at this point in time after having over 100 receptions, over 1,000 yards last season for the Carolina Panthers. He's going to be 34. So it is smart to look at other options long term, but I don't think that he's really going to be taking a back seat per se as things currently stand. Obviously, you bring in Deontay Johnson. He's your top wide receiver currently. Now, does he fill the role as a number one? Not in my opinion. He's not a true number one. He'd be a very good number two for the Carolina Panthers, but right now he is the de facto number one, but an improvement from what they had last year in Adam Thielen, a younger player who can separate, which is desperately needed here in Carolina. I don't know where Gallup fits into that. Does he take over the Mingo role here in Carolina as the number three or maybe the number two? That's one thing I'm just wondering about that. But it is worth Carolina Panthers still looking at a veteran receiver who has produced in the NFL, even if his production levels have dipped since suffering a major injury a couple years ago. Mike Williams, though, that's someone that I'd be very interested in. He's going to be 30 in October, so this is probably not a guy you're going to be able to keep around for the long-term rebuild here in Carolina, however long it takes. Hopefully it won't be that long, as the Carolina Panthers haven't been to the playoffs since 2017, and you, the Panther fan, have suffered far too long since David Tepper bought this team. He only played in 3 games last year due to an ACL tear, and I was looking back at his Pro Football Reference stats and trying to see the games he's played. Because for me, for whatever reason, it feels like Mike Williams is always injured, but he does play in a lot of games. The one serious injury he's really had was the ACL tear. He did have a back injury at the end of the 2022 season that cost him playing in that playoff game where the Jags came back against the Chargers. That's when Brandon Staley probably should have been relieved of his duties. But if I was going to pick of these two players, I would want a Mike Williams. He is going to fill a role the Panthers currently do not have, and that's a big-bodied receiver who can be a reliable pass catcher, who can still make some big plays. I would love that Mike Williams here in Carolina. I don't know what he's looking for monetarily, because obviously that's going to be important. Also, what's going to matter is what's he looking for as far as this stage of his career. About to hit 30, hasn't been able to go deep into the playoffs yet, playing with the Chargers, and that's just the whole Chargers of it all. Does he want to sign back in his home area with the Carolina Panthers that are a team coming off a 2-15 season? Something that we have to ask ourselves about every single player that looks at signing here that has produced at a fairly high level in the NFL, which I believe Mike Williams has. But Mike Williams comes in here and he can fill in at that X spot. You got Deontay Johnson maybe playing Z, and you got Adam Thielen in the slot. That is a dramatic improvement from what they had last year when it was Thielen, Chark, and Mingo, and guys could not get open, and Bryce Young did not look anywhere as good as a lot of people hoped, and really the coaching staff expected him to look his rookie year here in Carolina. So I'm on board with bringing in Mike Williams. Michael Gallup doesn't do it for me as much, but he is a proven player and maybe worth bringing him in anyways, just to add some depth and probably to give Mingo kind of an opportunity to sit back and to learn from someone. But Mike Williams, they can make that one happen. I would like that for the Carolina Panthers. Now, how does that impact where they go into the draft? Still don't really have a long-term option. As you've heard, I'm not a Mingo fan. Thielen, this may be his last season in Carolina. Williams, I don't expect that to be a very long-term deal. And then you look at what they did with Deontay Johnson. This is the final year of his deal that he'll play here in Carolina. They still don't have a long-term reliable option for Bryce Young. They may still look at the draft. We got to see. Do they sign Gallup? Do they sign Williams? Of my preference, it would be Williams. We'll see what happens this week as the Carolina Panthers meet with both those players here in Carolina. One player they met with, who is also from the area, Jadeveon Clowney, is set to meet with the Jets on Tuesday. Will Clowney end up in Carolina? We'll talk about it here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most of your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30. Get started at at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. After trading away Brian Burns last Monday night, the Carolina Panthers got busy in trying to find some replacements for Burns. They met with Chase Young, the former Washington Commanders second overall pick a couple years ago, and of course 49ers player after playing for them in the last half of the season. They also met with Jadeveon Clowney, the Rock Hill native, former South Carolina Gamecock, former number 1 overall pick, on Thursday. And later on Thursday, met with DJ Wonnum, who ended up signing a 2-year deal to come to Carolina after an 8-sack season with the Minnesota Vikings. A player coming off his rookie deal who could come into Carolina, instantly take over one of those edge rushing spots, and potentially be one of the foundational pieces in this defense moving forward under Ejiro Evero in Dave Canales' new Carolina Panthers staff. Now, what will the Panthers do moving forward? As they've already signed Wonnum, they signed K'Lavon Chaisson on Friday afternoon to a 1-year, up to $5 million deal, which means he's probably more of a rotational player than someone who's going to step in and start. But right now, looking at the depth chart, it would probably be Chaisson / DJ Johnson, and then opposite of them would be DJ Wonnum. The Carolina Panthers, a team that was the last team in the NFL when it came to sacks, last in pressure rate, a team that did not get much pressure at all on the quarterback, and also didn't get a lot of opportunities, considering this team did not lead at any point all season long in the fourth quarter. They're going to need to get some help at edge rusher if they're going to improve now that Brian Burns is out of the building. DJ Wonnum and K'Lavon Chaisson are here. One player the Panther fans really want to see come to Carolina is somewhat of a native son. He's not actually from Charlotte, from Rock Hill, which is in, of course, the Carolinas. It's in the Charlotte area. But Jadeveon Clowney, he again visited last Thursday. He is flying up to New York on Monday, and on Tuesday, he's going to meet with the Jets. It'll be interesting to see what happens here. The way I talked about the situation on Friday, I was really talking as the Panthers are moving on from Clowney. When they sign a starter in Wonnum, it's like, okay, well, maybe is that going to preclude them from being able to sign Jadeveon Clowney or Chase Young? Possibly. When they sign K'Lavon Chaisson, is that Panthers thinking that they're not going to get either one of those players and that they're absolutely moving on? Now they got 2 edge rushers. From my understanding, from someone I spoke to, the Panthers are still pursuing Jadeveon Clowney. They are not pursuing Chase Young. So Jadeveon Clowney, that is a player the Carolina Panthers are waiting on to see what happens. Something that's important for fans to understand when it comes to waiting for Clowney is this guy does not sign contracts in March. It just has not happened at any point in his career in the National Football League. Last year with the Ravens, he did not sign until August 18th during training camp. The year before that, when he re-signed with the Browns, he didn't sign until May 22nd. Of 2022. His first year with the Browns, he didn't sign until April 14th of 2021. And then after he left Houston, he got traded to Seattle. After he left Seattle, he didn't sign a deal with the Titans until September 6th. That's August 18th, May 22nd, April 14th, September 6th. This man has never been a priority for any team in the NFL. If he was, he would have been signed in the middle of March once free agency began. That's when I talk about most of the money spent right off the bat. You saw all those deals coming out on Monday and Tuesday. The priority free agents for the Carolina Panthers were the guys they signed right as everything got going. It's Robert Hunt, $100 million, $63 million guaranteed. It's Damian Lewis getting $65 million, 20-something million guaranteed. Those were the priorities for the Carolina Panthers. Everyone outside of that has signed some team-friendly kind of deals, like Josey, Jewell, not signing for too much. A'Shawn Robinson, I looked at it today on Over the Cap. His deal, the Panthers can get out of that after 1 year. They're signing team-friendly deals at positions of need, and they can come in and be solid players, but it's not like they're priority free agents that people are fighting over in the NFL. No one has ever fought over Jadeveon Clowney once free agency began. Now, once the summer months came around, then sure, teams might have been interested in having him come visit, but no one's fought over this man. So I understand the Panther fans want Clowney. I just don't see it as a must sign for the Carolina Panthers. Why? He's been an inconsistent player. He's going to be 31 years old. He's going to be 31. He's always been an inconsistent player. The guy that we saw who made an incredible play back in the Outback Bowl against Michigan all those years ago, he's never been that in the NFL. Since he left Houston, in the final year that he had in Houston, it was 2017, 2018. His last 2 years in Houston with the Texans, he had 9.5 sacks and 9 sacks as a Pro Bowler in both those years. Since then, he has not been a consistent player. He went to Seattle, had 3 sacks. Went to Tennessee, played 8 games before getting injured, had 0 sacks. Signed with Cleveland, had 9. And after having a 9-sack season, the Browns waited until May 22nd before they re-signed him because he didn't have a big enough market. He only had 2 sacks that year. Browns didn't want him back after he was talking bad about the team. They inactivated him in the final week of the season. He didn't sign with Baltimore until August 18th, where, yes, he produced. So we're talking about 3 sacks, 0, 9, 2, and 9.5 over the last couple seasons since he left Houston. He has not been a consistent player. He's not been a Pro Bowl caliber player since he left the Houston Texans. So I just don't look at him as being like the difference between the Panthers being a playoff team and not making the playoffs. This is a rebuild. The Panthers should really be focused on players that are under 30 and being able to develop them, get them to come into this culture that they're trying to build and help Bryce Young out. Like, that's the focus, not necessarily, hey, let's bring in Clowney because we need to get somebody who can get 9 sacks. Okay, he comes in and gets 9 sacks. That's great. He's just not going to be a long-term player here in Carolina. And A'Shaun Robinson, not going to be a long-term player likely in Carolina. Probably same thing with Josey, Jewell, Jordan Fuller, Dane Jackson. I understand all of that. But those guys have a lot of ties to the staff here in Carolina, and they also kind of fit what the Panthers should be looking for, especially when you look like a Wonnum, who's a younger player, Jackson coming off of a rookie deal, Jordan Fuller coming off a rookie deal. They're not over the age of 30, and they haven't already shown what they're the best of them, which is, I think we've seen the best of Jadeveon Clowney. Now, if he shines with the Carolina Panthers, good. Like, it's a signing that they definitely, it's not, I don't think it's a must sign, but it's a player at a position of need for the Carolina Panthers to have him starting and then have DJ Wonnum to be able to rotate in K'Lavon Chaisson and DJ Johnson, Amari Barno, Eku Leota. Like, that's a better situation for the Carolina Panthers. Is it an upgrade from what they had last year with Brian Burns and then a little bit of Vitor Gross-Matos? In my opinion, no. Because Brian Burns is a much better player than DJ Wonnum. And he's a much better player than Jadeveon Clowney really ever has been so far in his NFL career. I don't think it's going to be an upgrade, but it would be a nice signing for the Carolina Panthers. I just don't think it's something that they have to do. And if the Panthers miss out, the fans should be upset about. He's not going to make or break the season, y'all. I just don't see it happening. I don't think this can be a very good team next year. I hate to say that. I would love for them to surprise. There's just too many questions that still remain on a Carolina Panthers roster. Yes, the offensive line at guard looks better, but is Icky going to actually play better this upcoming season? Deontay Johnson, it looks good. Are the Panthers going to get consistent wide receiver play? Are they going to get the same Adam Thielen they got last year? Or is there going to be a regression because he's going to be 34 years old? Tight end, still question there. Can Chuba Hubbard really be the lead back for the Carolina Panthers this upcoming season defensively? All right, you're losing Burns, you're losing Luvu, you lost Von Bell. Like, that's not nothing, and there's a lot of concern still there at the corner spot, even with a J.C. Horn. So plenty of questions, and all the teams in the NFL have questions. The Panthers do have a lot of questions they need to answer, which is kind of one of the things where I'm like, okay, yes, cool. Clowney, if you want to come home, come on home. It should still be a up to like $6 or $7 billion deal that's super incentive laden. Because he has shown that, yes, he can produce, but he also can show you he can be complete dud in a season after you give him some money. Do you want to put yourself in that situation? Panthers think about it probably like, hey, we need somebody to come in anyways. He's a veteran who can help these guys, and that would be great. I just don't think that this is a player that the Panthers have to have. If they get him, great. I'll be happy about it. I'm sure you're going to probably throw it in my face, be like, oh, well, you didn't really want Clowney. I'm not saying I don't want Clowney. I'm just saying that it's not that big of a deal to me whether they get him or don't, because I just don't think he's going to change things that much. And quite honestly, I'd rather see the younger guys like DJ Johnson and Amari Barno get an opportunity and to see whether they can actually be an edge rusher than to bring in a 31-year-old player who's not going to be here long-term. At least Johnson's under contract the next 3 seasons. They got DJ Wonnum coming in here. K'Lavon Chaisson, a former first-round pick, now back with Todd Wash, who's his DC when he got drafted by the Jags. Is it possible that he fits this scheme better than the one that they're running in Jacksonville? We'll see. I just would rather have the young guys get an opportunity, see them develop, see them play, find who you can actually build around than going out there and getting a 31-year-old player. So that's just an update there in my quick thoughts, if they're even quick at all, on Jadeveon Clowney and the Carolina Panthers' pursuit of him. So we'll take a quick pause. Let me come back and look at the remaining needs and also just discuss Carolina Panthers free agency as a whole through 1 week here on Locked On Panthers. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets of Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's spend some time here before we get out of here looking at the Carolina Panthers free agency through 1 week and a couple of other needs they may have heading into the second week of free agency and just the next coming weeks before they start focusing in on the draft. Starting off with offensive guard, we knew this offseason the Carolina Panthers had to really do one thing, and that's help Bryce Young. They did that by hiring Dave Canales, then putting a staff around Canales and Young that can maximize Bryce Young's talents. We saw last year what Baker Mayfield did in Tampa, things he could not do in Carolina. We saw what Canales did with Geno Smith as he had a career renaissance up there in Seattle and still is maintaining that job heading into a third season. Good for Geno, good for Baker. Now Dave do that for Bryce, but Dave can only do so much. You have to have the players, and the Panthers saw last year, again, 7 different left guards, 8 different right guards. They needed to find someone who could step up and help at the guard spot, whether it's injuries or just having depth. They needed some solid players there, and they went out there and signed Robert Hunt to a $100 million contract. They signed Damian Lewis to a big-time deal as well to be their starting left and right guards, respectively, heading into the season, then moving over Austin Corbett to play the center spot. Panthers still need to add some veteran depth. They do have Brady Christensen, who we know can play at one of the guard spots, probably both the guard spots. They played Cade Mays and Chandler Zavala a decent amount of snaps last year in this scheme, the old scheme under Frank Reich. We understand those guys got some opportunities, but those are also the players that the Panthers really wanted to push down the depth chart and not have to go back to them at a certain point in time. So I would want to see them go out and sign maybe to Gabe Jackson, who came in late last season, who has ties to Canales and the Seahawks staff, having been a long-term starter out there in Seattle. He's still available from everything that I've seen. Why not bring him in to be a veteran? Now, it could be a situation like last year where you saw a player like Justin McCray who signed, and because he's going to be a vested veteran, the Panthers want to give him a guaranteed deal, so they cut him, but then they brought him back. Maybe they do it with Gabe Jackson. They bring him in, vested veteran, you let him go, bring him back. Who knows? They do, though, need to be interested in trying to find some more veterans to step in there at the guard spot. I think both those signings are necessary. I know the money's a lot for Hunt. But he comes in, he performs at a high level, he stays healthy. It's going to be well worth the deal, keeping Bryce Young upright and also being able to get a push from the interior to be able to run the football in short yardage situations, something the Carolina Panthers have struggled to do over the last 4 or 5 seasons here in Carolina. At the center spot, Austin Corbett moving over will be something to monitor throughout the offseason. I still believe the Panthers should be interested in going out there and drafting a center once the draft rolls around next month in April. I don't know if they want to do that, but this is according to Dane Brugler of The Athletic, is a draft class where you can find a starting center. And the Panthers have tried numerous times now to go out and get centers in free agency. They even tried last week to get a player like Lloyd Cushenberry. They just got outbid by the Tennessee Titans, and also he wanted to play under Brian Callahan there in Nashville. They have tried it. They've tried with Matt Paradis. They have tried with Pat Elflein. They have tried with Bradley Bozeman, and they have had varying degree of results, but none of those results yielded into a player who was going to be a long-term option for the Carolina Panthers. Corbett as well, I do not see as a long-term fit at the center spot for the Carolina Panthers. Could be a short-term and actually play well this year, but they need to find somebody, a younger player, cost-controlled salary, coming out of college, who can be that starting center for Bryce Young for the majority, the foreseeable future here in Carolina. Linebacker, Josey Jewell led the signing as far as he's a veteran. He's been in this system before, even if it's only been 1 year. He's been a solid player. He's had over 100 tackles in the last 3 healthy seasons in the NFL. you need to get somebody who had experience. You need to get somebody who could come out there and could understand what's going to happen, not be a long learning curve. May not be the best in coverage, but he's a solid run stopper, and adding a guy like A'Shawn Robinson to the fold to be there with Shai Tuttle and, of course, primarily Derek Brown, that should help out Josey, Jewell, and Shaq Thompson to be able to clean some things up. Still believe that they need to add some depth like they had last year of Kamu Grier-Hill and Deion Jones to back those two players up, particularly Thompson, who's coming off a significant leg break last year. Corner, I still have my concerns at the cornerback spot. J.C. Horn, as we've seen, has not been able to stay healthy. When he's out on the field, he is excellent, but he has not been healthy enough for the Carolina Panthers, and it's hard to sit here heading into the final year of his rookie deal. Now, we'll see if the Panthers exercise that fifth-year option. I think it's a no-brainer that they don't. Maybe they do. Had a conversation with Mike Kay about it right before free agency started, and he's kind of on the same page as me. He doesn't really see how they can do it, but they may do it, just as they're going to take a risk to give him the money instead of wait. He plays well, then you got a franchise tag him, and it's $8 million more than what the fifth-year option would be. So we'll see how that plays out in early May. Either way, though, CJ Henderson, who wasn't very good, he's gone. Understand that. You see that Dante Jackson's now in Pittsburgh after the trade for Deontay Johnson. Dane Jackson signs. Been a nice player for the Bills. He's really been their number 3 corner. He's had to start back in 2022 a lot of games. He's gotten opportunities. He's been okay for the Bills. I don't know if he's the guy that you're going to rely on opposite of J.C. Horn. I still think this is a position where you should go out there, maybe sign another low-cost veteran. And then, of course, in the draft, they need to find a long-term option. So corner, that is an area where I am fairly concerned moving forward, especially when you consider they've tried so hard to find long-term options there and to have a solid cornerback group. And that just has not been the case because of the injuries to JC, now moving on for Dante Jackson and CJ Henderson, just not panning out. Wide receiver, I'm encouraged that they're still looking at guys like Mike Williams and Michael Gallup. I do appreciate the Panthers are not just standing pat being, okay, we got Deontay Johnson, which was a steal, again, basically only giving up a 6th-round pick to get him, and they were going to cut Dante Jackson. Great move there by Dan Morgan as far as just the way they were able to get him to come to Carolina. Will he pan out? TBD. But still, like the move for the Carolina Panthers to get Deontay Johnson. So I do appreciate they're still looking at some veterans. I just don't think that Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, and Jonathan Mingo is enough for Bryce Young. You want to be able to properly evaluate Bryce Young, find a way to protect him. They did that by going out and paying a ton of money for Robert Hunt and for Damian Lewis, $89 million guaranteed for those two players over the next couple of seasons. They traded for Deontay Johnson. That's a good move. They have Thielen coming back. That's great. I just don't think it's enough. You spend a lot of money to help protect him up front. You haven't spent that much to get him some receiver pieces. Still interested in a trade for T. Higgins. I am. I'm still interested in drafting a receiver there at 33 if necessary. I'm interested in bringing in Mike Williams. I think this is a team that still needs to find a true number 1. I don't think there's one on the roster, even with the addition of Johnson. So they need to continue to be aggressive, not stand pat and think that this is good enough, because I don't think it's good enough for Bryce Young heading into year 2. Edge rusher, Wonnum, like the signing, think he's a solid player. He's not anywhere close to what Brian Burns is and was for the Carolina Panthers, but maybe he can be a consistent 8-9 sack guy. And if that's the case, that's a solid player. That's something you can appreciate for sure here in Carolina, as he's going to step in to a role as the primary edge rushing threat for the Panthers. That's a pretty big drop off, y'all. I know people were fine with Burns getting traded. They want to pay that kind of money. It's a lot of money that Giants are paying him. But don't get it twisted. Wonnum is not Brian Burns. You're going to find out real soon. Fan base that can be very fickle. 1 year, so you love Burns. He's putting up 12.5 sacks. Next year, he doesn't play up to that same level, and you're ready to get rid of him. Wonnum has not touched Pro Bowl status yet, and I'm not quite sure he'll ever be a Pro Bowler in the NFL. So we'll see what he's able to do, but don't expect him to be Brian Burns or to even kind of go up there and play at that high level. I think he can be a good player for the Panthers. Just temper your expectations a little bit. K'Lavon Chaisson has been a bad player, quite honestly, but maybe he can be reclaimed here in Carolina. We will see. As I already went over, Clowney, I talk about this, with Bryce Young, go spend the money to get somebody. Defensively, you should be spending money on your defensive players. They didn't do it with Frankie Louvu, who apparently they offered more money, and he decided Washington for whatever reason. But Brian Burns, they didn't want to spend money on him. They have not paid Derek Brown yet. We'll see what happens to J.C. Horn. Spend the money on the guys that are your homegrown talent. You need to spend the money offensively on bringing in players to help out your quarterback. I just don't know whether they need to necessarily get a Clowney. It'd be nice to get him. I just don't look at him as a long-term option. I would rather have some of the young guys you spend assets on, develop them, get them an opportunity, and see who you can really build with long-term. Because Clowney is not going to be that guy. Wonnum could be that guy. Chaisson potentially could be that guy. Clowney, just because of his age, is not going to be that guy. The Panthers, though, edge rusher spot still looks bleak, even with Wonnum and Chaisson and bringing back some of these other guys. And if they bring Clowney, I still don't think it's like the best situation in the NFL. It's a nice name, nice player last year. Just, I don't know, buyer beware, in my opinion. Safety, Jordan Fuller coming in, that good move for the Panthers. He's been a starter. He understands the system. Pairing him with Xavier Woods, that should be a spot that you really have not much concern about. We'll see if Jamie Robinson can be able to step up this year in a second-year role in Carolina, however he's going to fit into the scheme moving forward. So that's something they'll monitor moving forward. And then tight end. Still my concerns there. Tommy Tremble is going to get his opportunity to be the top tight end in Carolina this upcoming season, which is great for him. I do think that he can produce at a modest level. I don't think he's ever going to be like an average pass catching tight end who's going to put up like 500, 600 yards in a season, maybe 300, which would be a huge triple, basically what he's ever done in his career. I just don't look at Trimble as being that player, but he's a solid all-around tight end who can catch the ball for you, can help you when it comes to run blocking. But I don't think he's going to all of a sudden be like a poor man's Greg Olsen or anything like that in Carolina. I don't know if that's what people are saying. I just don't see that happening. But having him, Stephon Sullivan, Ian Thomas coming back, that's still a very underwhelming tight end group for the Carolina Panthers, and that has been one of the worst position groups in the NFL over the last couple of seasons, and they have not been able to get any help. Draft, I think that's probably the spot to get someone at free agency right now. I don't know who else they would get, but overall, I like what they did on the offensive line. Question about Corbett, of course. Linebacker, I like that they're able to get a player who knows the scheme and has started a lot. Corner, I have a lot of concerns. Wide receiver, don't stop. Love the Johnson trade. Don't stop. Edge, it's just going to be a work in progress. You're going to just have to develop players, in my opinion. And then safety, think they're solid there, at least for this season. Need to probably look at someone long-term as far as safety down the road. And then tight end, yeah, major concerns there just based off of what those guys have produced over the last 3-4 seasons here in Carolina. So that's where the Panthers stand after 1 week of free agency here on Locked On Panthers. That's going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Panthers, a part of the Locked On Podcast and Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe and follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where I'll be back with you on Friday to answer your weekly mailbag questions, either at me or DM me over on Twitter to get those questions into me now. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Tuesday.